Peace, everyone. Welcome to the Baruti Libre Show, and I'm your host, the Baruti Libre Kafele. Today's episode of the Baruti Libre Show, or today's topic on the Baruti Libre Show, broadcasted from the Brave Brand TV, is digital globalization, a global security asset or a global security threat. I repeat, digital globalization, a global security asset or global security threat. Now, for those who may not know, globalization is the integration of various economies throughout various parts of the globe internationally, and also the free flow of capital internationally. Now, of course, for people to get involved with globalization, it's for the incentive of capitalizing on the cheap labor, cheap markets, and opulent resources of various parts of the globe. That's what globalization is. Globalization has occurred throughout various parts of history, of course. Whether we look at the circumnavigation of the globe before Magellan, going back to the ancient Kemites, whether we talk about the Phoenicians or if we talk about the ancient Chinese who circumnavigated the globe for the purpose of global trade. So globalization has occurred throughout history, but it intensified after the Cold War era. The Cold War era was between 1945 and 1991, and it ended with the destruction of the Berlin Wall, and also the disintegration and dismantling of the Soviet Union. Now, during global politics, or within global politics, you had a bipolarity of power between the United States, who fought in the name of liberal democracy, individualism, and capitalism, and of course you had the USSR, or the Soviet Union, who fought in the name of socialism, collectivism, or collectivization, and also redistribution. Now, what we had were various decolonization movements after World War II, because there was a time in which Europe colonized the majority of the globe. But of course, Europe started to become financially perilous due to the fact that Europe fought two consecutive wars, World War I and World War II. But then, of course, there was a 20-year period, a grace period, if you will. E.H. Carr, the political theorist or political scientist, writes about that as an aside. But going back to the subject matter at hand, two consecutive wars, Europe was in financial trouble, was in a financial deficit, if you will. So what you had were decolonization movements, because once Europe became tenuous, then a lot of these social movements throughout various parts of the globe, a lot of these movements were fighting and demanding for the independence of their respective countries. What they wanted was political independence, so that they could have the self-determination and the autonomy to make decisions on their own and to fight for what they deserve, or fight what they believe in, if you will. They wanted their own territory. They wanted their own sovereignty. They wanted their own state. They wanted their own resources, their own government. They wanted legitimacy. So that's what happened around that time. So of course, with a lot of the countries becoming independent and extricated themselves politically from a lot of their so-called colonial masters, they had to choose between two civilizations in order to sponsor the newly independent countries: the United States or the Soviet Union. So what you had was various proxy wars ensuing throughout these various parts of the globe. Proxy wars for the purpose of global hegemony between the United States and the Soviet Union, but in the name of these various countries. And of course, you had a lot of covert operations, if you will. Covert operations and also assassinations of various political activists and also political leaders of various countries, with a lot of front organizations involved in that. The CIA, of course. You had contractors like Air America was involved specifically in Indochina with the Vietnam War. So you had a lot of contractors, and you had a lot of covert operations from various bureaucracies within the United States for the purpose of maintaining order, consensus, and stability within the society, and also to make sure that the United States is victorious within the Cold War, so that there won't be a threat of communism or socialism internationalizing, which would, of course, bring about a lot of dynamics within the tectonic plates of global politics. So that's what you had going on. Now, of course, the United States became the unipolar power around the time of the latter part of the 20th century. Now, what this did was coincide with the dot-com boom, or the digital revolution. So, of course, you had the New World Order, which was coined by President George Herbert Walker Bush around the time of the ending of the Cold War. But then again, synchronically or ubiquitously, you had the digital revolution. Now, the digital revolution was the time in which the internet started to take charge, which you started to see a whole lot of internet companies come into play. A lot of internet companies emerged: Amazon, Google, AOL, Earthlink, Yahoo, you name it. A lot of companies, a whole lot of them. Some of them survived, some of them didn't, some of them were bought out, some of them were co-opted, whatever the case may be. So that's what started to happen. So of course you had the enhancement of globalization led by the West, but then again at the same time you had the digital revolution. So what I did was I amalgamated or consolidated these two concepts into the digital globalization concept, or the digital globalization complex, in which you had the global syndication of ideas efficiently, meaning that you have the efficiency, the proliferation, and also the expediency of ideas getting circulated all over the place, in which people will engage in free trade, but of course with free trade, people develop ideas, like in ancient times. You had the influence, or should I say the augmentation of ideas, religions, if you will, through trade or through conquest. But now you have that through the internet, because you have cyber terrorism, of course, when you have the hacking of various internets, or the hacking of various networks, of course, of different people in various parts of the globe. But then again, you have global trade. But of course, a lot of people are trading via the internet, various social media outlets, or should I say various outlets in which people could have the platform in order to share ideas, share products, share services with one another. And also, what we're seeing is the augmentation of internet usage, and also the inverse decreasing of people utilizing the television, or utilizing the television as their main means of internalizing or learning or processing information. Statistically speaking, it's empirically proven, it's verifiable. According to the Nielsen Total Audience Report, from 2011 to 2015, television viewers between 18 to 24 decreased by 35%. And also, within the third quarter of 2013 compared to the third quarter of 2014, you had 147 hours of television views a month from an individual person. But then again, that was in 2013. Now, the following year, 2014, that number decreased to 141 hours per month. So, of course, you're seeing the decrease of people utilizing traditional forms of media in order to internalize information, and people utilizing the internet instead. Because according to the International Telecommunications Union, it is proven that in 2015, 40% of the global population utilized the internet. Now, what that does is that accounts to around 3.2 billion people. 3.2 billion people use the internet today, which is a large amount, meaning that the internet is continuing to grow and it's becoming a force to be reckoned with. And also, what we're seeing is this. A lot of revolutions and a lot of social movements are emerging from the internet, like Twitter, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, whatever the case may be. So that's what we're seeing. And we could go back to 2011, in which you had the overthrowing of the dictatorship of Ben Ali in Tunisia, of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, and also you have a lot of civil unrest going on in Syria, Libya, Bahrain, Jordan, Mali, and various parts of the globe, meaning that it transcended the geopolitical designation in the Middle East or the Arab world. It started to happen in various parts of the globe synchronically. It started to happen ubiquitously all over the place. So, of course, this was due to the internet, due to Twitter, of course. So you have the syndication of content, and with the syndication of content, you have the politicization, the mobilization, and the radicalization of a lot of the younger generation and the middle class, because with them organizing among various people through the internet, because it's an efficient means of communication, you see people overthrowing governments that they didn't dream that they will overthrow probably 5 to 10 years ago. Now, that's one of the positive aspects of the internet, and of course you had a lot of non-government organizations, non-profit organizations like Amnesty International and the various others, the Red Cross and various others, who were aiding a lot of these people, aiding a lot of people who were fighting for self-determination, fighting for equal rights within these various countries, within various parts of the globe. Now, of course, the negative aspect or the con of digital globalization is you have the radicalization in a negative way of the mindset of a lot of people, vulnerable people, to the point at which people resort to terrorism. And of course, terrorism is when people bring about malicious attacks on a large group of people, and a lot of the time you have a lot of innocent lives getting killed or decimated for the purpose of expanding one's or a political parties, or should I say a political group's ideas, being able to spread their ideas, legitimize them for the purpose of power. So what we see is the weaponization of religion or ideology for the purpose of geopolitical interest or geopolitical gain. So you have a lot of people that are getting radicalized and joining organizations like ISIS because of people like Abu Bakr Baghdadi, people listening to interviews by Anwar al-Awlaki and the various others. So people are becoming manipulated, and by becoming manipulated, they fly to these various countries and they become terrorists. They become terrorists. So the thing is that that's a global security threat. Now that's terrorism from one aspect of it all. Additionally, domestically speaking, within the South, you have terrorists, megalomaniacal, racist, xenophobic terrorists like Dylan Roof, who his stepmother said got caught up into internet rage. I don't know if she used those terms, but something along those lines. And then from there, she he went into a church in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and killed 9 innocent lives, including Senator Pinckney, who was the pastor of that church, Mother Emanuel Church, and this ensued on June 18th, 2015. So, of course, with the digital globalization which is occurring, it has its pros and also it has its cons. Now, what we need to do is we need to empower institutions, digital institutions or physical institutions, which are for the empowerment of the community, the enlightening of the community, the global community, and which is for enlightening, educating the people so that there could be freedom, justice, and equality within society, besides supporting, patronizing, and also acknowledging negative institutions, which is for the decimation of society, and also which is for causing unrest within society in which innocent lives are getting killed, people are getting killed psychologically and mentally, and it's affecting a whole lot of people in a negative way, because the key to humanity is survival biologically and also survival intellectually and psychologically. And if we do not support the positive institutions, then of course we are in a perilous and vulnerable state as a humanity. So this is my episode on digital globalization. May you all think about it. May you all be on the lookout for the essay which is going to get published on BarutiLibre.com, and you all take care. Thank you.